Thank you both so much for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourselves and give us a little idea of what it is you do?
Sure. I'm Natasha Adler. I'm the program director at the Rose Andom Center, which is a family justice center located in Denver. So we're kind of an umbrella agency that houses a bunch of different partner agencies that serve domestic violence and sexual assault survivors.
It's very important work.
Thank you.
Yep, my name is Cassie Ratliff. I'm our Chief Impact Officer at Family Tree. And over at Family Tree, we partner with all people to overcome the interconnected issues of homelessness, domestic violence, and child abuse. And through that programming, we run a domestic violence shelter for survivors of domestic violence and their families, as well as some outreach services and legal advocacy programming, which is at one of our other FJCs in Jefferson County, Porchlight.
Also very crucial work. Thank you both for everything that you do. And we're obviously right now in the middle of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Why is it, from both of your perspectives, being so involved in the work, why is it so important to talk about things like domestic violence?
Everyone knows someone who's experienced it or has experienced it. You hear the stats, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 folks have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime. And when we start to think about the children who have witnessed domestic violence, it is really prevalent. And when I grew up, it wasn't something that we talked about. It was hidden. And so we hear a lot of things around like, domestic violence is more prevalent now. It's not that it's more prevalent, it's been happening. What we have done and started to do is have these conversations, bringing it to the forefront to make sure that people know that this is happening to folks out in the community, and that there's resources like Family Tree and Rose Andom where people can go to get support, and that they don't have to do this behind closed doors anymore. They can go out and get help, and we can support folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think also bringing awareness to the issue gives us an opportunity to be able to debunk some of those myths and misconceptions that are out there. A lot of times people don't know what domestic violence is. And so being able to talk about it and really clear some of those things up might spark something in somebody saying, hey, that's kind of happening in my home or in my relationship, and give them an opportunity to reach out to agencies like ours and seek support.
On that, what are some of those misconceptions that people have that you see are harmful when it comes to domestic violence?
Something that we see a lot with our younger folks is this idea of toxic relationships. I think that's been kind of glamorized as a term, especially in schools and in media and music and things like that. But toxic relationships is often a way to say a power and control relationship, a domestic violence or an intimate partner violence relationship, where there's that unhealthy power dynamic, where somebody is utilizing tactics to use emotional abuse or gaslighting or name calling or controlling behaviors to be abusive towards that partner. And so that's something that we see often.
One of the things that people who choose to use abuse do often blame the survivors, or they blame the victims. And so people are walking in this world feeling like they are at fault for the thing that had happened to them. And so we spend a lot of time working with survivors, helping them understand that somebody did something to them, and they did it because they want power over another human. They want to control how another person shows up. And so it's not about them. And that's a really hard thing to get over. That's where that gaslighting comes in, where perpetrators are blaming the victims or survivors. I think one of the other biggest things, and why Domestic Violence Awareness Month is so important, is it's not only to help the survivors themselves, but it's to help their families. And so sometimes we are the first people to recognize that maybe a relationship isn't healthy. And we can see some not great things in those spaces. And so we're able to, during this month, and all times throughout the year, but really focus this month on how you can help people who are in these relationships. Telling a person to just leave or get out of a relationship it can actually be extremely dangerous and put people in harm's way. Whenever you see a story on the news about someone who's been an intimate partner where it's a death or people have been hospitalized, those folks have left. And so what we spend a lot of time doing is safety planning with people, helping them get out of relationships in the safest ways that they can. And so we spend a lot of time educating families on how they can support a family member in this space and helping people get out of these relationships in the safest ways for themselves and for their children.
While we're on this topic, what is any advice that you would share for anyone who might be struggling with a situation that in their relationship that isn't healthy, or to a loved one who is seeing someone struggle?
Yeah, I think the best things folks can do is call organizations like Family Tree, like Rosandum, talk to some of our advocates, and we'll help guide people, help them understand. We can talk about what power and control is. We have a crisis line at Family Tree where last year we answered over 7,000 calls to survivors of domestic violence, and helping them with things like this, helping them recognize what their relationship might be like, helping them do safety planning over the phone, helping them get to shelters like our own, or maybe Family Tree's not in a great location and we're helping people get to Rosandum. I think one of the best things about programs like this is how much we partner and work together and really try to meet the needs of the folks that are calling us. And because every case is unique, every person is unique, every situation is unique, and we want to make sure that we're getting the right services to the folks. Might not be Family Tree, it might be Rosandum, and that is amazing because that family or that survivor is going to get the resources that they need.
Yeah, in that same vein, I mean, collaboration is such an important part of the work that we do, and so it's a protective factor. It's something that helps survivors stay out of going back to those abusive relationships, and so does having community. And so if you are with somebody that is experiencing abuse, if you're a parent of somebody who's experiencing an abusive relationship, seeking to listen to understand and being that safe place is an extremely important part of that relationship, because if the survivor has a non-judgmental, supportive place that they can go, even when they feel like they screw up and they go back to that relationship, they know that they have somebody who is safe and who will not judge them. That's an extremely important part of being able to, to have a support system. And those protective factors are what keep our survivors safe and prevent homicides.
I want to ask you about what you've seen over the years in Colorado or within your specific organizations. Talk to me about whether you've noticed a change in the number of people seeking help.
Yeah, at the Rosandum Center, I mean, we continue to see an uptick in survivors that we serve. One of the big partners that we work with at the Rosandum Center is the Denver Police Department. The detective unit, the domestic violence detective unit, is actually housed in our building, and they consistently are seeing higher and higher numbers. So Denver crime rates are going down, but domestic violence cases are unique in that they're consistently going up every single year. 4,000 cases a year are ballpark how many cases our detectives are working among about 12 detectives. Wow. And they just continue to go up, and we're seeing that through COVID, past COVID. And so domestic violence, like Cassie said, isn't something new, but it's something that is continuing to increase, and we're hearing more about it. So I think part of it is maybe reporting more, but also it's not slowing down.
No, it's definitely not slowing down, but I think organizations like Rosandum and Family Tree, where we're constantly bringing awareness to these issues, survivors now have more resources than they did before to come out and get help. You now have police departments who have victims advocates who are trained to support survivors. As a child growing up in a relationship like this, law enforcement or witnessing this, law enforcement didn't step in and support my mom. They told my mom they couldn't take my dad because he had children in the home. Wow. And so when we talk about domestic violence now, we talk about the resources and the education, and it's not just organizations like this. It's law enforcement, it's schools, it's going in and educating youth around teen dating violence. And so when they see these trends like toxic relationships, that we can go in and help them understand how unsafe those are. It's around community supports and these protective factors. When we ensure that survivors of domestic violence have access to safe housing, the biggest reason folks have to return to abusive relationships is because they have nowhere else to go. And so creating programs like Family Tree, where we have housing for folks when they're leaving abusive relationships, and other programs that we can partner with in the organization, making sure that people have access to those mental health supports, because people who choose to use abuse often identify people who are already vulnerable. And so they identify folks and they pick them. And making sure that people have access to these community supports is how we prevent these things from happening in the future, and how we support and wrap around these folks to give them all the services that they need.
Absolutely. And thank you again, because the work that you do is life-saving. I want to ask you, what are some red flags or things that you think people should look out for in their relationships, but also in the relationships of their loved ones?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ones that we see often is isolation. And so when we talk about community as your support, and as community is what helps people get out of relationships like this, it was when we cut people off from their community, so they have nobody else to lean into. That's one of the biggest ones that we see. The gaslighting that we've talked about, the blaming other people for their own actions is really a huge thing that we start to talk about and helping people understand.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to, we use the term power and control all the time, because that's really kind of the core of where domestic violence comes from, is that shift in power dynamics within a relationship. So any sort of dynamic where somebody loses their own autonomy in the relationship is something that you should look out for. So if there is if somebody starts suggesting, you wear something different, and that evolves into you can no longer wear a certain type of clothing, to you can no longer go out with your friends because you are dressing too suggestively, to you're not allowed to be around other males, to those kinds of things start to escalate to where you're starting to lose privileges, or many other examples like that, where the autonomy over your own life, you start to have less control over the choices that you make, are going to be red flags. So anything that really shifts that power dynamic, I think is always a cause for not necessarily concern, but conversation at the very least.
And I think now we're seeing even more red flags around for our LGBTQ couples, where folks may be trying to out someone when they are not ready, or folks around their immigration status for fear of making claims that they might report them if they share information. And so these are all areas that we really support survivors in understanding their rights and what can and cannot be done.
Well, I appreciate you both for coming here and helping raise awareness and educating others about this very, very serious and real matter that we're seeing in Denver and beyond. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you feel is important to highlight? How can people find you all? Can people help your organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and probably for the both of us, that, I mean, right now with the cuts to victim services, the federal shutdown, I mean, one of the biggest things that we're experiencing as agencies is just limited resources. And so I think one of the biggest ways that people can support survivors is to support your local agencies that serve survivors, because a lot of our programs are in jeopardy because of the funding cuts that we've experienced, but also, keeping an eye out in your community and with your loved ones. You can visit the Rosandom Center website. That's www.rosandumcenter.org.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think programs like Family Tree and Rosandom are being asked to do more with less, and our calls aren't going down. Our nights of shelter are not going down. Last year, we provided over 8,800 nights of shelter for survivors of domestic violence and their children and their families. And so when funding is being cut and we're putting programs like this at risk, we definitely need all the support that we can get. And same thing, you can check out our website at www.thefamilytree.org. But we're not going anywhere, and we need our community's support as these calls keep going up, as the need it continues to increase. We definitely need the support.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully the community can step up for people who are helping the community like you all. So thanks again for joining us and for sharing this information.
Thanks for having us.